Today, we're going to be going behind the scenes of a transformation project that we delivered for a reinsurance organization. They're in the FTSE500. It was a big one, and today they're still a client with us. We're actually going to be exploring how exactly we explored the engagement and ran the engagement, the strategy behind, and what ultimately created value for this large reinsurance client. Welcome to the stage, Brandon McGill.
Thank you, Natalie. Pleasure to be here. Hey.
I want you to talk about, when thinking about this specific client, what were the challenges they experienced when they came to seek services from RevOps Automated?
The story is very often the same. People come to you saying that their biggest data point is the lack of data points, which really then kind of gives you an indication of where their organization is at from a 30,000 foot view. And I think it's interesting because it doesn't matter if you are a tiny startup or a multi-billion-dollar reinsurance company. The issues are very much largely the same. And that's really where most people come to us to talk about is we need more data. We need to understand what's working and what's not working, rather than, oh, this is broken or something's not working. These insurance companies are huge, for all intents and purposes. So, they have processes, they have things that work already. It's just a matter of making sure that we can see it and they can see it across the board.
Would you say that the main symptoms were related to sort of the pains of not being able to predict what was going to happen, backed with data? What were the sort of signs that they were like, we need more data?
Yeah, it's everything, right? Because they can't tell you how long it's going to take to process a treaty. They'll give you, a broad range. Oh, it can take anywhere from 6 to 18 months. That number is huge. And so the answer is we need to understand better how fast this happens and why the roadblocks come up when they come up and how we deal with them. So, all of this is around being able to see the processes from start to finish with an accurate understanding of both the time that they take, the revenue that they bring in, and the costs that are associated around them.
Why do you think that we approach this the way we did rather than thinking about implementing a new technology?
It's a great question because I think so many organizations as well, if you ask them, what does your CRM look like today? They say, oh, we have a team subscription. We have access to Office 365, which gives us, access to Excel. And we have a subscription to Copilot, which allows us to ask the questions that we, for things that we enter into our spreadsheet. And at that level, you're at, the very bottom of the totem pole in terms of you can't go any lower because there's no less technology. The answer is not rushing into a tool to say, oh, this is exactly what you need. This is how you need it. It's setting up and prefacing those conversations with understanding, tell me what the problems are, tell me what your stoppers are, tell me what those pain points are, so you can direct them to the right solution that often has to sit in with their processes that they already have established.
And of course, reinsurance is quite a unique, let's say niche industry.
Yeah.
How did we go about understanding how this reinsurance business actually operated before we made recommendations? What were the step-by-step things that we focused on?
We have spent hours now, flying back and forth to their offices, talking with stakeholders, talking with end users, across the entire revenue operations process to understand what exactly is going on in the business today, not only from a sales, customer success, and marketing, triangle, but also what's going on in the background as they are processing treaties, as they are going through operations, as they are, talking about, working with attorneys, lawyers, all these other different things. And so we've run several discovery workshops, all live and in person, to really get everybody in the same room to understand what challenges they had and how their business works. And that's one of the first things that we talk about is we're not here to provide solutions when we sit down in the strategy workshop. We are here to understand what's currently happening, what we want the end state to be, and then how we can potentially build some bridges between today's reality and tomorrow's reality. And this really ends a lot of times in very in-depth process maps, across the entire customer journey that the business has. Because if you don't understand the process from start to finish at the 30,000 foot level, it's going to be very hard to drill down into, oh, what pipeline stages do you need? Oh, what kind of ticket pipelines do you need for tickets for customer, et cetera. It doesn't work that way.
And there is some unique sort of customer facing teams within reinsurance. And I'd love to sort of hear more about how we worked with some of those.
It's not simply about taking a customer from, a lead, into a prospect, into a customer and closing the deal in the sales pipeline, but it's about how everything happens in the background and integrates with the existing technology stack that the organization has to make sure that the deals that are coming across are not only, forecasted to close, but also that, the data points are extremely relevant coming across to make sure the deal makes sense financially. The biggest surprise is that, you have on this side this really important financial piece of tech that makes sure that, we are creating profit, from what it is that we sell from insurance policies, et cetera. But on the other side, when it comes to the sales process and making sure that we're closing these deals, we're back to what we talked about before. We have a subscription to Office 365 every year. We have Copilot, as our AI tool. And we, use webinars and Teams to make sure that we talk to one another and talk to our customers. We've got, kind of a feast on this side and a famine on this side.
I would love to know a little bit more about like how that even came about. Like, why is it that they historically didn't focus on capturing new market share or protecting the existing market share that they have versus focusing on the underwriting? I mean, do you have any insights into why you think that might be?
Underwriting is the heart of the business, right? I mean, that's where the money is made. They think that simplicity and the small numbers equate to a basic and simplistic perspective on the revenue operations side, which could not be further from the truth because these sales cycles are complex. These pipelines are complex. We have deals that are, retendering and having to renew every 6 weeks in some cases, and they're managing this on Excel.
How did you prioritize what to fix when doing this transformation? You mentioned, of course, the word CRM. It sounds like you evaluated the whole end-to-end process and perhaps decided that a CRM transformation was the best thing. But talk to us about, what you focused on.
That's it. I mean, I think, the biggest piece that we started with was making sure that their processes had a place to live. We were not out to rewrite their processes or give them new processes. That's one of the biggest mistakes I believe gets made in industry like this is you go in saying, "Oh, we're going to change the process. We're going to make this simpler. We're going to make this easier." It doesn't need to get simpler or easier in a lot of situations. It just needs to have a place to live so that people can actually see what's going on as it passes through.
And I think there's this kind of like misnomer or this kind of like belief that a CRM is a sales tool. No, it's in the name. It's a customer relationship management system. Anybody who has a potential relationship with a customer can be put on an end-to-end platform, and it can be developed, extended, and built to match your processes. And I think, Brandon, that's what you were alluding to, is the fact that you took all these siloed spreadsheets and all this data from over the place, consolidated into a compliant cloud-based platform in where we architected and customized a CRM that can be bought on the market into a way that fit their processes. And I think this word CRM should never be related to sales. It should always be focused on the customer relationship management.
It can manage end-to-end processes where a customer is involved from any stage of the journey, from when they first learn about the brand all the way through to when they're an evangelist and they're referring others, into the brand, going forward. And that's a really big piece here, is that this is across the entire revenue journey, not just a single piece, not just focusing on collecting revenue.
100%. And because, of course, that transformation is so large, it involves sometimes the cost of a new technology and often a cost of a service provider like RevOps Automated to support in managing not only the implementation, but the adoption. And of course, we know that investing that amount of money in a project to transform a business and the risk of it failing, how do we make sure that this new system is adopted? What are the sort of things that we put in place to make sure that that investment didn't fall flat on its face?
A lot of organizations look at kind of the 4 areas of a project in only 2 different ways. So the 4 areas are project management, strategy, implementation, and enablement. And a lot of organizations will bolt project management onto the strategy side, and they'll bolt enablement onto the implementation side, and just hope that these 2 roles themselves can, kind of hold both of these together as they're going forward. And we take a very different approach to that because all of these are very important functions within a project like this that can't sit under a single person. And so we have a project manager that makes sure that, the project runs smoothly. We have myself, or people like me that introduce strategy, ask the right questions, those who then build everything out. And then the unsung heroes here are really the enablement team. Don't treat enablement as just part of implementation. Enablement is its own body of work in a project like this, and it takes tremendous amounts of time and effort and working and communicating with the team that you're trying to enable to make sure that this is done successfully.
My next question is actually related to, like, was there any kind of things that happened, bumps along the way, maybe new things you discovered that made the project suddenly change direction? Like, talk to us about that.
Keeping it simple at the start is really the most important piece, especially because there is a lot of security involved around the work that we're doing in the organization and all the technology platforms that they already have. And, we started with this organization 2 weeks before there had been a huge data breach, with Lloyd's.
Wow.
And yeah, so everybody came into these strategy workshops very, very tense about a new organization coming in, tapping into customer data, tapping into their systems. And we had to spend at least 3 months going through, various different security conversations, not only for us, but for how the CRM was going to integrate into their larger platform, how data was going to be shared from one instance to another, et cetera. This was something that we had to pay attention to in much more depth and really get smarter on ourselves to be able to deliver something successfully here.
So, looking back over the last perhaps 12 months of working with this FTSE 500 client in the reinsurance space, what sort of outcomes have we at RevOps Automated helped them achieve?
The question always is, well, how do we increase the attendance at all of these events? And before their process, they'd never gone through a kind of end-to-end process discussion of how a marketing event takes place. And we created a centralized system for events and a centralized system of assets that allows them to put together a marketing event, publish it, and go live in less than 24 hours. Whereas before it was taking them months. We have taken away all of that manual effort and created better visibility into how these campaigns are working across emails, across attendance, across, how these are then translating into deals and renewals.
Outside of marketing, is there any other success stories you want to share?
I mean, implementing a pipeline that can be seen not only by leadership, but across 3 different separate lines of business across 5 different countries. Before, and cross-selling is one of the most important aspects to reinsurance, in this regard, because if we have a protection client, we want to see if we can then, cross-sell into capital solutions to help improve their balance sheet at the same time. Before, there was no way for capital solutions to understand what conversations protection we're having with a given client, or if they'd even been introduced. Whereas now we have a system where if the protection individual, helps identify that there's an issue here, they can tag in capital solutions, bring them into the conversation, and there's a consistent chain of communication, and it can be seen by every business unit across the board so that we know exactly where our clients stand with each line of business and what our upsell opportunities are, including, kind of predictive saying, hey, this may be coming up, you might want to jump on this call. And it's been really exciting because this all happened in silos before with, hopefully these people talking to one another. But now there's no question that everybody can see in one place how the conversations have been having and how they've been moving forward to help close new business across an existing customer.
If I'm right, I remember that we'd also not only looked at who they were having conversations, but also the level of seniority those conversations were with as well.
Yep.
Because I think, especially when you're protecting market share, you need to be looking at, are we continuing to have conversations with those really senior levels of people, or are we slowly being bumped down to more junior executives, which is that's an early sign of, churn.
We have identified a custom way for these organizations to understand what not only the parent and child company relationship looks like, but also the sibling companies within the children as they relate to the parent. And this is something that is not always standard out of the box. And it makes it a lot easier then for these organizations to see and map kind of where these relationships span from company to company across not only the parent, but the children, and then across the board for siblings as well.
If another reinsurance business was beginning this journey today, what advice would you give them?
When you're going out to discuss, a change management project like this, ask the question that we were talking about earlier. If we decide to work with you, what does your team look like when you come into our project? And if they don't say they have a project manager, they have a strategist, they have an implementation specialist, they have an enablement team, you're probably shopping with the wrong person, because they're going to try and merge and mash all of those things together. And it's going to lead to a very suboptimal experience, especially if you're trying to make large scale change. You need to have all of these different components, and you need to have a partner that will work with you across these things to make them successful.